Tammy. Just trying to get a little arranged here. Wanted to take a little bit of time today to talk about less is more. I say this all the time, and it's funny how it gets challenged quite frequently. And the reason for this is we've become accustomed to taking a lot, doing a lot, having a lot, and while we want to make sure that we always have plenty, there is, when it comes to healing and wellness, less is definitely more, in the sense that the body actually gets to use something that it needs and be able to respond appropriately instead of being inundated with so many different things. It's interesting, the comparison that came to me prior to sitting down and making this video was around the concept of diet, right? We hear all the time how it's in our best interest to avoid processed foods, highly refined foods, packaged foods, however you want to call it. We're strongly encouraged, and even when I was in all of my nutrition courses, it's the same thing. They really encourage you to consider shopping in the exterior aisles of the grocery store, where all of the single item foods are, your produce, your meats, your cheeses, just things that are the simple foods. It's when you get closer in the interior of the store that you start to get into the more packaged, processed foods. And the reason for that is obviously because of the additives, the chemicals, which are additives, preservatives, colorings. The more processed it becomes, the more you're actually introducing into the body, and the body's having to metabolize not just the food alone, but it's actually having to metabolize all the chemicals inside the foods. And I don't mean necessarily just the additives, it's also having to metabolize any of the constituents that's within the food. We know that green tea has caffeine in it. Well, the caffeine has to be metabolized by the liver, which gets broken down into xanthine, theophylline, and theobromine, and progressively from there. So this is how the body works, and the more complex our foods, the more packaged they are, the harder the body has to work. So the same thing, the same concept can and probably is wise to apply to our supplementation. It's hard to do with medications because medications have a number of ingredients, but you can really begin to pay attention to your supplementation so that you don't take a lot of unnecessary items. I'll give you an example. I was sitting down doing a wellness consult the other day with somebody. We had pulled out all of the supplements that this family was taking, actually the individual was taking. And one of the things that she handed me, because she's been taking several different types of thyroid supplements, one of them being ecothyroid, and I forget the names of the other ones. Ecothyroid is a desiccated thyroid tissue from an animal. Sometimes they're sheep. It just really depends. This one in particular didn't specify where the thyroid tissue came from. It just said thyroid tissue. But she, through working with another clinician, was told to stop taking that because, I don't know, didn't ask why, but the suggestion was to stop taking that and to try another one through another company called Thyrosin. I don't know the company. I am naming products because there is a concern, and I want to make a point of this. It's not to poo-poo the product at all. It is merely to point out that there are ingredients in these products, in this particular one, that is not beneficial for the person who's taking it. It is a thyroid supplement, and understandably so. The herbs that were in it were spectacular. They were ones that I would recommend. At the same time, there were other things in this, and one of them of which was labeled, it was called serotonin. Doesn't specify on the label where the serotonin comes from, but it said serotonin. It also said L-acetyltyrosine, and it also said hypothalamus. Again, I don't know where the hypothalamus, where that particular ingredient comes from. I don't really necessarily have a concern as much with that as I did with the serotonin and the L-acetyltyrosine. The reason for that is the person who's taking it is actually dealing with PKU since the time they were born, and they are highly anxious already. And one of the things we do know is that if serotonin levels go too high, you can trigger potentially migraine headaches, definitely anxiety. And these were red flags for me that even though it might benefit some people that take it, it's not a advisable one for a number of people. So paying attention to your labels is first and foremost the biggest important thing. So as you read your ingredients for your foods, you want to begin to pay attention to the labels for your supplementation. Because there may be things that have been added to it that, again, unless you actually understand why that's in there, and you don't understand unless you ask questions and understand your own system, the chances of it causing interactions or adverse reactions are possible, highly possible. So it's really important to understand what you're taking and why you're taking it and what the potential outcome could be. And the interesting thing is once this person stopped the ecothyroid and went on to this other one, that there was an increase in the anxiety levels. So that right there tells me that this is not a recommended supplement. And what makes me feel bad is that these things cost people money. It's kind of like when you want to buy a car, you want to get it double checked before you invest in it. I hate to see people investing so much money in things that they end up not using it and it ends up sitting on the shelf. And I mean, for that, in this particular case, this particular supplement is not going to be suitable at any given time, given what this person has already going on since he was born. I've seen other people on a boatload of supplements and medications, and by boatload I mean extraordinary amounts. I've seen as many as 34 at one time. That I don't know how anybody could possibly eat given taking all those pills at one time, or even half of that amount at one time. When I was working in a treatment facility, I was working side by side with a nutritionist at that time that she was selling a lot of supplements. She was working and representing a company, and there was somebody that was, and so that's, I don't think she was an RD, so it wasn't a dietitian. She was somebody that had just was hired on as a nutritionist and was making supplement suggestions based on their health concerns, their addictions, the trauma, and so on and so forth. So this particular person actually came into the facility with an eating disorder. He was known for, was severely anorexic, but it was more of a bulimanorexic, which is where he would purge, starve himself for days, and then he would go crazy with hoarding food and binging on food, and then so this was his cycle. He'd been doing it for years. He went from 250 pounds. I stand 5'8". This man was closer to 6'2", 6'3", and he was at one point 250 pounds. By the time he got into the facility, he was under 130 pounds. So he was pretty well wasted and was put on supplements, understandably so. He was extraordinarily malnourished, and at that time he was taking 16 different things. And of course his excuse at that point was, I can't eat because I can't get anything in my stomach. So it was a really difficult thing to do, to try and work with him, because his MO was not wanting to eat. So the point to that was, even though supplementation is necessary, and this is the reason why I'm a big advocate for essential oils, is the essential oils actually help to modify the genetic expression so that the cells begin to pick up the proper nutrients, and so thereby you don't need as much. You can still invest in certain supplements and benefit through your food by improving your digestion and using the essential oils very specific to your chemistry that will help support nutrient uptake, and thereby you don't need to take as much. And that's exactly what we did with this particular client. Was we backed him down off the number of supplementation because the goal was to get him to eat, but we had to improve his nutritional uptake. So we incorporated essential oils into his diet, his lifestyle. And we saw gain in all areas. So that was a very cool thing. Other issues I've seen with too much is, and another particular person I know that currently working with a nutritional wellness center out of Florida. She lives in Pennsylvania, and she brought me in to help her because she suffers from extraordinary headaches and foggy headedness, and nausea. I mean, it's very common. I mean, it's not uncommon. I mean, how do I want to say this? It's all too familiar. When you hear these levels of symptoms, it sounds very similar to migraines, the way she describes her situation. And so she brought me in to help her. At the same time, I no sooner started with her, and then she informed me that she had already hired out to work with this center out of Florida. Now, this is a long distance relationship for her, and she no sooner started with them and her health plummeted. Now, this has been 8 weeks in the running, and I finally had to back off because I was working with her and trying to simplify things for her. And her thing is that if you don't suffer, you're not going to get well. And the coaches with this company are letting her know that, do you expect it to get worse before it gets better? Well, in some ways, I understand a healing crisis. I actually understand it quite well. But you don't want it to be prolonged. And at no point in time do you want to inflict pain and extraordinary discomfort. This is something that I learned a great deal through the practice of yoga. You push yourself to the edge, you experience a level of discomfort, and you just allow that, but you back off. You don't press into it and cause, even further harm to the body, because pain is not an option. I know at some point in our lives, many of us have heard, no pain, no gain. Well, I want to say, when it comes to healing and wellness, sometimes you can expect a healing crisis, in which case you want to back off a little bit, just to give the body a chance to reacclimate and reset itself in order to be able to continue to move forward. And I expressed this to her, and it confused her because she's paying a lot of money to this other company, and this is what they're telling her, and I completely understand. We don't want to be investing ourselves so greatly to be told that we're doing something wrong. And she actually asked me point blank, do you think that I'm doing the wrong thing? And there was no way that I could say yes. I don't agree with suffering. At the same time, it's up to everybody's choice. It's everybody's individual choice as to the method, the path they go forward on. So I told her that I completely supported her choice to continue working with this company and her in the way she was moving forward with this. And at that point in time, I just told her I am going to have to step away, because I just don't want to overwhelm and confuse you any further. You're coming at this you're hearing two different philosophies, and your best bet is to continue on until you don't want to continue on any longer. Like I said, that was when she was 8 weeks into the program. As of this morning, we're now 10 weeks into the program, and she's still not feeling any better. But I can't, you know, the only reason I know that's because she placed a call and said as much. And at the same time, I just don't want to confuse her. So we're kind of working with this and dancing with this and possibly seeing a shift in her approach. In any case, I'm hoping that she finds some resolution and restoration of feeling good sooner than later. And however she comes about doing that remains to be seen. But this is another reason why less is more, because I know how much she's taking. I know there's a lot of crossover in what she's taking. She did allow me the opportunity to sit down and take a look at the things that she's taking. I did review all of the ingredients, and I do feel like she's taking too much. And you can see it, especially when, you know, she's got significantly dark circles. Her face is just long and gray, and she just doesn't look healthy. I've seen happen with other people as well, and I've had to back off because I don't want to come against, because what I do and what I support is the mentality, like I said, that less is more. And really understanding that the fewer the ingredients, the better your body has of dealing with what it's supposed to. Because what the body does is it takes in the information, it takes in the nutrients, it takes in the plant constituents, the ingredients within the plants, you know, when you get the oils. And mind you, even when you're eating plants, when you're eating them, there's smaller amounts. You don't get the concentrated levels of essential oils. This is the reason why using essential oils is so beneficial. If you take an herb, you're getting, you know, the minute traces of essential oils, so it's beneficial. You are getting somewhat of it, but when you actually get the full extract of the essential oil, now you have the concentrated dosage that the body can use on a very small amount. And again, you actually use less of the oil because it is so concentrated. And I think I've talked about this before, but I will say it again. When I say less in the way of oils, we're only talking about a couple of drops, you know, 2 to 4 drops at a time. You may do this several times during the day, depending on what you're dealing with, but the oils will actually provide the instructions to the cells. The cells will pick up the nutrients from the food. If you support the digestive system, which is imperative, the body can actually break it down better, assimilate it better, the cells pick it up, and you're on your way. And that is how simple this can be. If you're taking medications, you can do the same thing. Again, I'm not trying to take away from anybody's business who does sell supplements, because supplements do have a way into these healing processes. When you have a health condition that is so far progressed, supplementation is absolutely, if you've got somebody who's taking medication, supplementation is necessary, because you need to replace the nutrients that are being depleted by the medication. You need to support that. So there is a place for everything. It's just that we don't need to be piling on one more thing to try to squelch that next symptom. And really recognizing that the less we provide our body, the more information it can take and create. How do I say that? The less you take in, the more active and proactive the body can be. That's how I want to say that. And that's in the case of essential oils. That's the other thing. In the case of essential oils, you know, when you start mixing 6, 7, 10 oils at one time, you're doing too much. I mean, you can turn your own genes off and inactivate your own receptors with too much. The body will stop taking, it will only go for as much as it needs, and then it'll stop. And so piling in all these different oils can actually deactivate the receptors. The oils contain terpenes, and we do recognize the fact that these terpenes will deactivate receptors. So the more you use, the less effective they become. There was what I just had a moment here where it was, oh yeah, I was going to say, I was explaining to someone the other day that one single essential oil could have anywhere from 40 to 200 different constituents, just one oil. So I unfortunately don't know how many constituents exist in every single oil, but let's just say, for instance, you were to pick up chamomile romaine, okay? That's going to have, like I said, anywhere from 40 to 200 constituents in it. That's could be more. The range can vary. It's just that one oil will have that many different ingredients. And then if you start adding, 1, 2, 3, 4 oils to it, now you have, you could have anywhere from, 160 to 800 different ingredients. Some of them, a lot of the oils actually have similar constituents in them. Now, when I blend for people, I try to make sure that we vary the constituents because we're trying to do and affect different things within the body. So you don't want to pile on too much of one constituent. So being cognizant of what's in your oils is incredibly important. And you don't want to go into too many ingredients. Yes, you are working with an entire genetic system, but keep in mind, some of these constituents are noted to have effects on many different genes within the body. So there isn't any reason to have a lot because the oils are metabolized within the body from anywhere 20 to 40 minutes. So using, you want to use a blend because the blends actually, there's a synergy when they come together. And like I said, because you're dealing with so many different genetic variations, being able to cover the whole body, this is where essential oils become holistic because it's working with the whole system. You can have a significant impact based on the mix of constituents, but don't go over 4. Because at that point you've done too much and you could begin to deactivate your receptors. Even if it is only temporarily, you can turn them off. And that's not, we don't want that. And now you're going to have someone say, well, it didn't work for me. Well, if you use too much of it, there's a good reason why it didn't work. So there again, you don't want to use a lot. You want to know what's in your essential oil blends, and more importantly, you want to know where these essential oil blends come from. Just like your supplements, you want to know who's producing them and what's in them and how much is in them. The more, if you're going for a particular nutrient, then keep it simple. If you're going for a particular effect with an essential oil blend, keep it simple and know especially where they're coming from. The most effective term is called genuine and authentic. Therapeutic, there's no such thing as a therapeutic grade. I realize we see labels that say therapeutic grade, but that is not a tested quality. Therapeutic is just basically stated by the people who are packaging it, but therapeutic, you cannot go out and test an essential oil for its therapeutic qualities. You can only test it for its genuine and authentic qualities. And this is where it's really important to know who's testing it, what kind of tests they're getting, and specifically who's farming these. Because one of the things that we do know is that just like farming anywhere, any kind of food we're farming, plants get sprayed, and it's possible to spray plants right towards harvest that would enhance their ester quality and enhance the fragrances, so they get a false positive on their chromatographs. So you want to make sure that you get into even more detailed testing to guarantee the quality of the oils that you're getting. Otherwise, and the other thing is the extraction process, because otherwise you're getting added chemicals in there, and so it could be in the production of it in the sense of growing, or it could be in the production of it in the sense of extraction. Solvent extracted oils, there aren't very many these days that are still solvent extracted, although there are some, because steam distillation doesn't work for all plants. So we have to go into a solvent extraction, and unless it's CO2 extracted, they're using some kind of, I don't want to call it synthetic, but toxic solvent is how I want to say that. And so when they depressurize the chamber, not all the residue comes out. It's not clean. And so there's residue of the solvent left in the oil, and those can be creating issues. Hexane is a big one. But CO2 is a clean solvent process. So it's also more expensive, but you have to consider what you're wanting to put into your body. And it does get absorbed through the skin. Anybody who doesn't want to believe that doesn't know what patches are. And it comes to the pharmaceutical world, we have plenty of patches. We've got contraceptive patches, we've got smoking cessation patches, so there's a lot of patches, and the oils are no different. So again, I've touched on a lot, but it is a really important concept to remember that less is more, and the more simple the product, the easier it is in your body to do more for you. That is the most important thing. So just like we select our foods these days, it's really becoming important to pay attention to what's in your supplements, what's in your oils, and really how much is it that you're doing, and what it is you're wanting to accomplish. I think if I were to sum it all up, we have a lot of health issues. And I mean, there's labels after labels, you know, that we have. Diagnoses is another way to call it. And if we were to simply support the neuroendocrine system, okay, through addressing the digestive system and helping the cells to generate the proper neuroendocrine balance, you would be worlds ahead of restoring your wellness. It sounds very simple, I understand that. But what I see happening is somebody is having a thyroid issue, so they go on and they take a lot of, they specifically target the thyroid. And what happens is, and I've mentioned this before, when one chemical is out, they're all out. If you're born anxious, you already have a chemical imbalance. And so really working with the neuroendocrine system is where I see the most results. I met a young man today, he's 11 years old, an absolute doll. I happened to meet him sitting at the coffee shop. He was sharing hot chocolate and crab bisque with a friend of mine, and it was very interesting to observe him. It was the first time I'd ever met him, and the more people that came around and the more distraction there was, the more heightened he became. And the way the conversation was going, because there were several adults there, and we were talking about autism and ADHD, and he says, well, I think I have autism. I said, well, I don't see autism based on what my experience of autism is, and I've worked with many cases of autism. What I saw was ADHD. And he says, well, I was diagnosed with that. I actually take a medication for that, and but he can't sleep even with taking the medication. And all I was really connected to at that moment is if we just restored balance to his neuroendocrine system without that medication, he would actually find his way back into sleeping and would be able to focus on one person at a time and be able to address what was going on and not be so hyped up that he wanted to run with his hair on fire, because there was just not a lot of crosstalk, but there was so much attention on him because he liked being the center stage. He was very, very social, just a very charming young man. And at the same time, the more the more voices around him and the more interaction with him, because people were talking to him and then they were talking to one another, it just kept throwing him for a loop. And he finally said, I just gotta go. And he wanted to go back down to the river. So again, all I noticed in that young man was that to work with him and help support his neuroendocrine system would have made the biggest difference for him, because it would help restore whatever hormonal imbalances are going on. Obviously, with lack of sleep, there's a challenge with potential melatonin production. There's that alone. And then obviously with ADHD, you're also talking about the ability to focus, which is now we're talking about neurotransmitters. So there you go. I mean, neuroendocrine. We could get into the diet, and I don't know all of his specifics, so I can't make any strong suggestions for him right now specifically. However, just balance to that neuroendocrine system would make his world rock solid, and he would soar. So anyway, that's it for today. Let me know if you have any questions. I look forward to chatting with you. Email me personally for your specific concerns if you have any. And until then, have an absolutely beautiful holiday weekend. Take care. Bye.